Thank you, Thierry. Well, it's a little bit upsetting to be concluding because so many things have already been said. So, being the French person here, well, Willie also, I think he is French. Yes, you're French, Willie. I have a few ideas, so it might not be very organized, but I was writing down as Massimo was speaking, Alessandro, and then also, of course, Willie. So, just a few ideas. As you know, I mean, most people will know that I'm a specialist like Massimo and you all of minority religious groups. And so I'm always very upset when I see that some of the practices may be from, if the bill is voted, will be forbidden, such as, homeschooling, etc., etc. But also I have lived in areas where, and I've taught in areas where 70% of my pupils were Algerian and from North Africa, and I've experienced what, in fact, some of the atmosphere that some parts of France now have to live with. I lived quite a long time in the north of France, and exactly, in fact, where Monsieur Darmanin, the Minister of the Interior, is the mayor of. And so I have a few things to say. I probably will repeat some of the things that have been said. Now, first of all, when Massimo spoke, you made a point, Massimo, of differentiating between Islam, regular Islam, as we could say, from radical or ultra radical Islamism. I must say, but maybe I haven't heard, all the politicians, at least those on the side of the government, but every time I've heard them, they always make it clear that they are not speaking against Islam as a religion, as a culture. They're not speaking against Muslims, but they are speaking against Islamism and terrorism. All right, so this is extremely clear. I've never heard them speak about l'Islam des Lumières because nobody here people would think it's funny. So it might be in some texts, but when you hear them on the radio, and this morning again, I was listening to the interview of Mr. Darmanin precisely on this particular subject. So it's always something extremely clear. And it's always said that, in fact, the major victims of Islamists are Muslim, French Muslims or Muslim in the whole world. So this is something I wanted to stress. Also, I wanted to say that Marlène Schiappa, just before having this position, was Secretary d'État for the promotion of the rights of women. And she fought in a very, very aggressive way against violence against women. There are several women killed every day by their spouse or companion in the house. And she was extremely sensitive to discrimination of all kinds. And women, of course, the La Femme was a major topic. But I can understand why she would be also very upset about what can happen to women in les sectes, etc., etc. So I'm not, of course, supporting that, knowing quite a lot of the sects that can be targeted here, but you have to know where those people are coming from. So Alessandro, before I tackle what Alessandro said, I wanted also to say something that I will repeat, probably something that was already said, that somebody said that human dignity is very hard to define, of course, and we all know here that if you want to protect human dignities, I think it was Willie maybe, or Massimo, but I think it was Willie, saying that what is human dignity for the Catholics, what is human dignity for LGBT people, etc., etc. So of course this is extremely problematic in the bill, of course, and even the principles of the Republic. I mean, we have, of course, liberté, égalité, fraternité, but still, it's always very complicated to speak about values, to have a law on values, because these values are not necessarily understood in the same way as people are. Also, something that I didn't find expressed enough in the discourse, not today, but in the general discourse on the radio and television, is that the latest terrorist attacks were perpetrated by people who were not French Muslim. They were not French Arabs. They were not North Africans. One just came through Italy, by the way, from Tunisia. And the one who killed the teacher, my colleague, was from a Chechen who had fled from Putin, had received political refugee status against Putin. So people are saying that maybe we should have sent him back to Putin and not kept him here. And he had been in France for some 10 years. And so he's a Chechen. I mean, we didn't colonize Chechnya. We didn't colonize that area, the Caucasian, etc., the Caucasian countries, etc., etc. So people are really worried about that. So we get all these people coming, and also right now it's the trial of the people on the Thalys. These people, I can't remember exactly where they came from, but I don't think they were French citizens. All right, so this is something I wanted to add. Also, when Marlène Schiappa talked about, yes, les sectes, etc., and when I saw that Fenech and the Mivilude was suddenly, you know, being reborn as a sort of phoenix, you know, out of its ashes, because last year we were all very happy to believe that the Mivilude was given less power. This really was very worrying, because, I mean, this was strange because quite a lot of us, and I'm sure some of you here maybe, but at least in France, people like me, were quite happy. I'm not going to say happy with terrorism, but we thought, well, at last, you know, the French government or the authorities are going to look at the real dangerous groups, the Islamists. And thanks to that, they don't talk anymore about les sectes, you know, like Scientology or the 12 tribes, all these groups like that. And so everybody was quite satisfied that finally Islam had changed the gaze. I mean, had moved the gaze of the authorities towards really dangerous groups, and not just towards, you know, les sectes or whatever, you know, little groups totally harmless that are being targeted all the time. So it's very worrying to see that the Mivilude with Fenech is suddenly, you know, again coming to the fore. I wonder, but I'm sure some of you probably know, I don't, the kind of political power Fenech can hold. I mean, does he have secret files on some politicians to suddenly be given again authority on the, you know, the Mivilude and all these things? Now, something else I would like to say, and then I will stop. I was very, well, no, there are two things I would like to add. I'm also very perturbed by the problem for education at home, homeschooling, which here is called instruction en famille, IEF. I have a friend who just left before we had the Zoom meeting, who raises a kid at home for medical reasons, but the medical reasons will be still allowed. You can still raise your, I mean, the bill provides that you can still raise your kids at home, I mean, educate them at home for medical reasons, but the medical reasons are extremely narrow. So that somebody like the little kid I know very well who has asthma and cannot be in a public school, I mean, in a public environment right now because of COVID, well, this won't be enough. And if you look at the bill, at the provision, I think it's Article 18 or maybe the next one, special conditions of families and of children, they are not specified, but they will only be allowed for 1 year, so that education for like 3, 4, 5 years, until now it was allowed until the age of 16, this will not be possible. And even right now, the authorization to keep a child out of school has to be delivered by some authorities, and in fact it can be, and I think it must be, the director of the collège, that is to say the high school, or the lycée, high school, I mean junior high school and high school, of the area, because you know that we are divided into specific school districts, and you must go to the school of your school district. Derogations to go to another school district are practically impossible, at least in Bordeaux, for example. And right now they are told, they are at least instructed not to deliver authorizations to have the kids stay at home. So even now, before the bill is even discussed and voted, you already have these provisions to fight against homeschooling. Now, the thing that when I read the text and I read it, and of course I signed what Massimo wrote, I had the impression, I still have it, that the major reason for attacking, or at least targeting, all religious groups is in fact because the word Islam or Islamist mustn't be in the text, because then we will be, I mean, France as a country will be even more criticized and attacked and whatever, boycotted and whatever. So that I think that the logic in the minds of the people preparing the bill was, let's make it so broad that we won't be criticized as being anti-Islam. So I see this as the major reason for that, because a bill and a law, as you all know, has to be formulated in general terms, because now it's Islam, it might be tomorrow something else, you know, etc. So, and finally, to conclude what I was saying, what about the reaction of the French public? Of course, because of confinement, I haven't spoken to a lot of people, but I mean, I've lived here for long enough to know the reaction of people, because every time I speak about what I do, people usually think, oh my goodness, what a weird research doing. Why do you bother about these groups? So I don't think the general public, I'm not talking about specialists of human rights, etc., but I think the general public will not care about that. Homeschooling, that's about, the official numbers, that's about 50,000 kids. There are more and more, however, notably on the Catholic side, because a lot of Catholic parents do not want their kids to be exposed to gender equality or LGBT, I mean, the gender, you know, ideology. So the figures might be higher than this. Of course, there are a tiny number of people actually, of kids homeschooled in Muslim families, this was said here. But I mean, 50,000, you know, kids out of millions of children, that's not many. Also, you know, the law and all the discourse right now is about, you know, France, the land of the freedom of expression and the caricatures. So we even have a politician like Ségolène Royal, the previous socialist contender for the presidency, say, well, you know, maybe we should not caricature characters, we may offend people. Well, as somebody said, I never particularly opened the pages of Charlie Hebdo. The Pope, Catholicism has been far more caricatured than Islam. I don't think people know that it's not about freedom of conscience, freedom of thought. In fact, it's because they know that 9/11 didn't have anything to do with, you know, the caricatures of freedom of thought. So people feel that something should be done against the ideology that's seeping through many layers of society, in particular in schools. We have, I mean, I taught, as I told you, in the North, we have in many schools a fairly high percentage of children of Muslim who are Muslim, and they will refuse, more and more cases of that, and I have personal testimonies. They will refuse courses in natural science. They will refuse sports. Women, I mean, girls mixed with boys. We have places like where I lived and near Monsieur Darmanin's city, Roubaix, we started having swimming pools with special days for women, special days for men, etc. So this is what the general public hates. This idea that you can have a minority of people dictating laws to the general public. So I think the law, the bill at least, will not be criticized by the French. And in fact, I'm almost sure that people will say that it's not enough. And that this is a bill that's not powerful enough to protect not just freedom of thought, but the way people reason, the way people act every day, etc., etc. We have the same problem in hospitals with husbands or fathers coming and refusing that the woman or the daughter be examined by a male doctor, etc., etc. And we have a lot of violence about that. So this is all, at least I could think of in the past hour or so. I'm just giving you my feelings. I asked Thierry and I asked Willie, what do you want me to say? I said, well, I'm not specialist, a legal specialist as you are all, but this is the feelings that I have regarding this bill and the atmosphere. So this is it.